All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with you today. Looking forward to a fun live stream with Phil. It's going to be a blast. I am Ben Eubanks. I'm the Chief Research Officer for Lighthouse Research and Advisory, and I'm a researcher, author, speaker that is trying to improve human resources one HR pro at a time. So I'm excited that y'all are out there listening in, hopefully get some good ideas, takeaways from the conversation. And again, here with Phil Haussler from Quantum Workplace, we're going to talk about AI, what it means to the workplace, what it means to the worker, and what it means to us as a sort of HR leadership audience. So Phil, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to have a good discussion here. For everybody out there listening in, take a minute, chime in the chat, let us know where you're connecting in from. I've already seen a couple people already doing that. It's good to see you out there already chiming in. We're going to bribe you today. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and be completely above board. We're going to give away some books, some other resources, some things to you as we're going through here today. If you're chiming in, you're asking good questions, you're sharing your opinions, we'd love to hear from you. This is not meant to be just a static one-way transmission. It's a conversation. So just like Phil and I will be sharing back and forth, if you've got a question, throw it in there. You want to challenge us? You think that this is a great idea? Throw it in there. We'd love to hear from you. You think it's, there's problems with it? Ask. We'd love to address those as we go through the conversation today. So Phil, before we dive into some of this good stuff around AI, what it can do, what it can't do, some of those sorts of things, would you take a minute and let the audience know more about who you are and what you do, please?
You bet. I am Chief Product Officer here at Quantum Workplace. We're on a mission to make work better every day. We've got a solution set of tools that help HR pros capture feedback, find meaning and understanding in that feedback,
Mhm.
and turn it into action, and equip and enlist the help from their managers and teams to do so as well. That's my day job. That's my my working hours version of me. I'm a father of 3 young sons. Well, not so young anymore. Middle
Mhm.
school to senior in high school, and been married for 23 years. And yeah, that's a little about me.
Awesome. Wonderful. I grew up in a house with a bunch of boys. So fires, good fire extinguishers, probably a safety thing, good first aid kits. So that was our big lesson learned early on. Make sure all those
Absolutely.
things are well distributed throughout the house and throughout the property, because you never know when something's going to pop up. So
Yep. Absolutely.
excited to be here with you. Looking forward to talking about this. I always enjoy getting a chance to talk about these things with someone who spends his life in the bubble of technology, right? Because you're going to have a different perspective a little bit. I come from the background of, I was an HR leader, I was a practitioner. And so I get a chance now as a researcher to talk about these things and understand them more. Let's start off with something kind of broad. As I mentioned to the audience out there, for all of you listening and earlier, like the goal here is to talk about AI, what it means, what it can do, and some of the things that the team's been building and working on that I'm really excited about hearing more about. So just to start us off, Phil, what do you think the sort of broad sentiment is in the HR landscape about AI? What's the thoughts on that? Because you see the headlines all over the place, and I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to getting your take on it too, because I know you've been doing research as well. Yeah, so our product teams are constantly listening to our customers and to HR pros, both in interviews and looking at our own product metrics and the usage behaviors inside of our tools. And when it comes to AI, here's kind of what we're hearing and what we're seeing. Lots of optimism and excitement. HR teams are almost universally strapped. They are, often a small team, a small but mighty team operating, and trying to make the most of what they've got. And so they are very used to looking for ways to scale their impact. And I think a lot of HR pros are seeing the opportunity with artificial intelligence and all of the new applications of AI to do so. But I think also, unlike you, I've never been an HR practitioner, but I've been operating as a product developer, partnering with HR pros for the last 17 years. And so I'm an honorary HR pro at this point.
We'll take you, Phil.
And so I know that working in HR sort of rewires your brain and sort of rewires in a way where you automatically jump to and can see the things that can and often do go wrong when it comes to humans and human relationships. And so that optimism, that excitement is balanced by, a fair amount of skepticism, or at least show me how this is going to work. And so, we're seeing both sides of that. We're embracing both sides of that and trying to lean in there.
Excellent. I would agree with that. Absolutely. Okay. You do have the honorary. You can put that badge on for the day at least. We'll see how the conversation goes. If you can wear that for the rest of the week. But
All right.
I would agree with you. That's what I usually hear when I'm talking to an audience of HR leaders about AI and what it means and everything, those sorts of things. There's this group in the room that's, hey, I've been trying it. I think it's exciting. Look at these things I've been able to do. There's a group in the room that's like, I'm kind of worried to even start, because what does that mean for us? And it's one of those things where you have to admit that, yes, things are changing. And that's always a little bit scary to say things are going to be different than they were in the past. And they're always changing, but admitting that is hard sometimes. And then there's another group in the room that's like, no, hands off completely. We're not, I've seen the headlines. This is all going to end badly. I saw that movie, like that Terminator, like everybody's scared of all these things.
Yep.
And I feel like it's my job. It sounds like you've got some of this too. Like, I want to educate, I want to enlighten, and then you can decide if you do want to pick those things up or not. But if you walk up and you see a drill for the first time, you're like, I don't know if I need to pick that up. That looks kind of dangerous, but I know how to use it. Once someone teaches me, once I learn more about it, I can learn the use cases. Great. Then I can take that and apply it and build something beautiful. I can't build something beautiful. That's not my skill set, but that may be yours. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the drill metaphor. We talk about it as a power tool where the instruction manual is changing every day. And just like with any power tool, you've got opportunity to do more with it than you can with a manual tool, right? With a backhoe, you can do more than you can with a shovel, but also with a backhoe, you can break through a fiber optic cable pretty easily. So, with great power comes great responsibility. And so we're taking that seriously and proceeding very intentionally when it comes to the applications of this tool.
Bonus points to anybody in the chat who can name what comic book character that's "with great power comes great responsibility" quote comes from, because that'll be nerd points for anyone out there who can quote that one. Okay, so speaking of some nerd points, let's talk about some of the things that it can do. So we talked about some sort of generics things like that, the power tool examples and stuff. Like, everybody's generally familiar with it, but let's get more practical in the HR bubble. What are some things that you see are opportunities for us to be leveraging these AI technologies and tools in order to be more effective, be more capable as HR leaders?
Yeah, I think, well, I can speak to what we've been shipping, and maybe I'll just kind of bust through a few short descriptions, and you can kind of you can tell me what sounds interesting to kind of dig into. But maybe I'll step back and give a little bit more context to root some of these stories in terms of what we do as a company. So we've built a suite of tools that captures feedback, turns it into meaning, and helps managers and teams turn that meaning into action. We do that through employee listening, so surveys and both engagement surveys and ongoing lifecycle surveys, as well as a suite of performance tools that help managers and teams get and stay aligned. So from goal setting to feedback to one-on-ones and recognition, really equipping the organization and people and teams within the organization to give and receive feedback on a cadence that makes sense for them. So that's what we do. We've been building this suite of tools for the last 20 years and have gotten smart about monitoring cultures and how the tools that you can use to push culture forward and push employee success forward. I think that the types of applications we're going to see across the HR suite are going to be really, really varied and diverse. And some of those are going to be invisible. They're going to be so small that you don't even notice it, but they're going to be important. So to give you an example from our world, when it comes to employee surveying, mapping questions together, right, from survey to survey, it can be difficult and can be sort of time-consuming work. And AI can help you do that, right? It can do a lot of semantic matching. It can help you do things that ought to be easy, but historically haven't necessarily been easy. The more that we allow HR pros to self-serve, the more they can do things that make something as simple as, should this question be mapped from one survey to the next, difficult. And so AI is helping us with things like that. Some of the other things that we're seeing go a little bit beyond that. So there's a whole new class of artificial intelligence called generative AI. And generative AI is kind of what it sounds like. It is generative. It helps generate, and it can sort of mimic the way that our brains are processing and generating ideas, thoughts, summaries. And the applications are really, really surprisingly almost endless there. And so I'll just kind of ping through a few of the applications that we've done inside of our product already. So the first thing we rolled out last summer, we call Smart Summary. Any HR pro that's been involved in trying to find the story in employee comments knows how painful and time consuming that can be, because it's not just reading the comments one time, you're reading them again and again as you slice and dice the organization. And it's not just you rereading the comments again and again. It's you and all your managers and your executives coming in, and everybody's rereading all these same comments over and over and over again. There's no shared truth to what this body of comments might mean. Smart Summary solves that problem. It can, using generative AI, take any body of comments and within a few seconds summarize the contents of those comments. And we're not trying to replace reading the comments, but we're trying to create a shared truth for what that body of comments means and replace some of the rereading that happens again and again. So that's Smart Summary. Again, using the summarization power, which is one application that these large language models are proving really powerfully, exquisitely positioned to do. We rolled out Goal Generator that helps managers and employees collaborate to come up with better goals. We know that great goals drive employee performance and engagement, but too often we see less than great goals getting used inside of our system. And Goal Generator really helps a manager and an employee collaborate to come up with better goals using simple question and answer. What's a single problem that we could solve today that would help me, my team, or organization? And those simple kind of input output prompts that are easy to answer, along with context about that employee, like their title, their position in the organization, their department. All that rich context can come together to spark great ideas and generate, do that divergent thinking so that the employee and manager can converge on a great idea. All right, that's 2. I'll even go quicker here. Feedback Assistant helps managers and employees write better feedback more quickly. So it can take really raw, rough thoughts and help a user rewrite them in a way that lands and doesn't backfire for that user. And finally, just this within the last few weeks, we've rolled out a suite of AI-powered tools within our survey action planning solution that helps find meaning in the results, help create better conversation for a team about their results, and then use all that context to generate better ideas about how to act on that data. So we call that AI-assisted action planning. Anything in there sound interesting?
No, not at all. I'm trying to write these things down as fast as you're sharing, because there's some really good use cases, some good examples in there of things that, again, when I was an HR leader, when we do our surveys, it's, drive that response rate, focus, and then it's done. You're like, oh gosh, now I've got to go through and figure out what the heck everybody said. And it's fine if it's a multiple choice question, but when it's open-ended questions, it's a lot harder to figure out and parse out what sort of things are going on there. Yeah. And one of the things that we found in a research experiment we ran a few years ago is we had gathered a bunch of open text comments. When you ask a question about in one of your surveys, like, tell me about your boss or your relationships there or something, or tell me what's working well at work. And someone can put in as little or as much as they want. And that can end up with a ton of data. Even if you're a smaller organization or mid-sized organization, that's a lot of information.
Yep.
And so we had a couple of different consulting firms look at that data and say, what's going on? And they could not dive into that. They could not give us anything specific within that body of text. It was just too much to parse out.
Yep.
And then we took that and passed it through an algorithm, and it came back and said, hey, for the men in your workforce, or the women, or the people who are in this office or that office, or this type of job title, we could really cut as deeply as we wanted to into the data and find out almost anything we wanted to from that, because it could give us that insight. But one of the other takeaways I got from that I think I want to call out here is when that AI is looking at it, you said the shared truth. If I come into that and we have 3 or 4 of us that are going to brainstorm on what these findings are, and we're going to hash out what we're going to do about it. If I come in there and I've got this perception that our managers at this organization are not very good,
yep,
every time I see that pop up, I'm going to say, see, I knew it. And that's confirmation bias. But I'm looking at the data and I have a bias already influencing how I'm going to see it. And so when I see that pop up, I'm like, well, that's the answer. We've got to solve that every time. Even if it's only happening 20% of the time, there's a bigger problem that I'm skipping over because I'm seeing something and expecting something. So I love that idea you talked about there with the shared truth, where AI can give us a sort of level playing field, level conversation starter, a foundation to be able to discuss without me being skewed or you being skewed in a direction based on what we walk into there with some preconceived notions.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we see it all the time. So you mentioned it's too much to find the story in. Yes. The alternate is you have a manager or an executive get so maniacally focused on a single comment, right? Something that was said, sparks some flight or fight response in their brain, and nothing else they read really matters because they're just tuned into this one single comment and they just can't get it out of their head. And so, the summarization capability can really, I love you bringing it back to the confirmation bias. I think a lot of people jump really quickly to, gosh, are there biases built into these models? And yes, we do need to look for that and control for that and observe for it. But one of the things I really truly believe is that a lot of these AI applications can help us as humans. We all have biases because we've developed over time these biases to help us navigate the world. And I think AI can help us overcome or mitigate some of our own cognitive biases that we all as humans both benefit from and suffer from.
Yes. They keep me out of trouble sometimes, and sometimes they put me back into trouble. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to know right there in the moment what that right thing is. I love that as a sort of decision support tool. That's what one of the things you said earlier is some of these things are going to be a little bit more obvious and some of them are going to be a little bit more behind the scenes, but under the hood, the value that it's bringing. And that's what I think of when I see some of these tools that are out there that are giving you like a little nudge in the right direction, like that one, like, let's just start here. This is what we all agree on as a basis and go from here. That's not something big and like, oh, wow. But it creates a better conversation for everything that follows. And the compound interest, the value of that is incredible. So let's talk about some of these other ones, because I was really, really intrigued by that. I have been accused in the past by my staff of being very direct. Like I'm busy and I'll just go like right to the point, like this is the thing. And I've had bosses in the past like coach me on, hey, slow down. Make sure you tell them, what they did right before you start just telling them what to do next. Yep. And so the piece you're talking about around the feedback assistant and thinking through that and letting me put some ideas in there and helping me to reformat that into something that's a little more, not just pleasing and pleasant. That's not generally helpful, but like pleasing and pleasant and directional and useful and actionable from that person. If it's feedback on something they got to change or something they need to keep doing. And I love that idea of, I don't have to just throw that out there anymore. And it's also not doing it for me. I have to at least give it something to start with. I think that's really helpful for a lot of managers because they don't know. When you look at the #1 selling book in the Sherm bookstore for years running was like 100 performance feedback phrases or something like that. One of those books that's just, here's how to talk to people. And I always thought that was kind of funny. But then this proves that that's a challenge people have. They're buying those books because their managers have trouble. And then HR is the one who has to deal with it when that sort of bubbles up to an issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. Feedback is incredibly hard. Doing feedback well is incredibly hard. And so many of our customers are looking to create a feedback rich culture.
Yes.
And at the same time, the same HR pro who might be saying, we're looking to create a feedback rich culture might in the same breath say, but we're not ready yet. And we need to, sanitize this feedback for our managers before it goes directly to the employee that it's going to be given to. And so that's, and I think that's proof. That's interesting proof point that feedback really is hard. And, we've sort of been surprised at the power of generative AI to help users give feedback that lands. We were kind of interested in this as a use case, but sort of maybe even ourselves a little skeptical of the need here. And we were kind of evaluating alongside other opportunities we could chase. And we ran a couple of small tests and sort of realized, wow, this really does, number one, improve the perceived quality of the feedback that's being given. Number two, cut a lot of the time out. It's surprising how much time somebody like you, who's been given feedback that, hey, Ben, you're too direct. Your feedback is too direct, spends rewriting and trying to take the feedback you've been given in a previous life, whether it was perfect, whether it was exactly right or not, where you're going to really try and say, okay, how am I giving the feedback sandwich here, to make sure that I'm not too direct. And so, so this feedback assistant, it's V1 of this. I know there's going to be V3, 4, 5, and 6 of this thing over time. But we have been shocked that the outcome of this is that people who use the feedback assistant inside of our tool are far more likely to come back and give feedback again. And that's evidence, I think, that this is doing its job and helping at the organizational level create that feedback rich culture.
I'd like to throw something out there really quickly. It's something that I've talked to. Sometimes when I talk to HR leaders about this kind of thing, whether it's this one or even the goal generator, I'm sort of working back and forth, and we're going to collaboratively put this out there. When those sort of things get in a manager's hands, or when someone hears about those, like, oh, well, I can picture that problem manager who's going to need that, but it may help them, absolutely. But you also have managers who are doing great work, who are excellent at giving feedback, who are like, this just allows them to be even more effective, even more valuable, even more contributory to that employee's success in the company. So don't see this as a fix for that problem manager. Yes, it may help them, it may guide them, but it's also those managers who you're like, if I could clone that one, I would clone her in a minute because she's amazing. Like, it's going to make them even more effective in their work. That's my perception on this anyway.
Yeah, no, totally agree. This is things that HR pros take for granted. These are the things that I think that HR pros, part of what drew you into HR is that these things come easy to you, and know that that's not true for every human on earth. And so I think for years and for, forever, HR has been looking for a way to sort of extend the impact. And, you can't be in every room, in every conversation, helping level up managers. And I think the promise of AI is that it can do some of this. It maybe can't yet, be in every room and be in every conversation and do it as well as you might as an HR pro, but it can certainly be in a lot more rooms and a lot more conversations than you can, just because of, the scalability of it.
Yes. In the perfect world, we'd have enough budget to just put an HR person in every place you need to be. And I say that, sort of tongue in cheek, because everyone knows that world doesn't exist. And so instead, we've got to find some other way to serve and support and guide all of our managers on a day-to-day basis. That's one of the things. We actually asked a question in a recent research study of over 1,000 different companies. We were talking to their HR leaders and said, where would you be okay with using AI to coach or guide your managers? And only 14% of companies said, nope, no way, no how. The other 86% of companies were like, oh, there's a whole range of things, whether the number one answer was helping them get better feedback, which is what we've talked about there. That's a challenge for a lot of managers. They don't know how to do it well. Companies don't really train them on how to do it. They just tell them if it's right or wrong, but they don't give them any feedback on how to do that better, which is kind of a funny sort of self-reinforcing failure there, cascade failure for you, for the technology people out there. But helping managers get better soft skills, helping look at employee feedback to figure out what challenges managers may have that they need to work on. So lots of things, opportunities for using that, and employers are generally open to that, as we've seen the data. But it's a new and different sort of things we started out with earlier. So two things really quickly. So if you're in the audience out there listening and you've got a question, I've already warned Phil, if you've got a great, really hard, super tough question, I'm going to direct that right over to him. If you've got an easy question, I'd love to take that one. That's our relationship here. We'd love to answer anything though. If you have it, if you're curious about something, you want to know more, I'd love to make sure we address that in the time that we have left. The other thing I wanted to go back to, Phil, is you talked about taking action a second ago. And I wanted to go back to that action planning piece, because that was always I said it earlier, the hardest part for me. We finished the survey, well, there's lots of good direction in this, but which one is the number one we need to take? Where do we need to go first? What's going to have the biggest impacts? What's this one high leverage activity we can do that's going to hit a big section of our workforce and help them with something they're struggling with? Talk about the action planning piece again, if you don't mind, some of the things that you're seeing there, the priority, what drove that, some of those pieces, because I feel like that's a real need that employers have. And I was super pumped to hear about that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we started as a survey company 20 years ago. We've spent the last 15 figuring out how to drive action after the survey. And in fact, the entire performance suite that we've built is a response to how do you drive action throughout the organization, and not just on a single intervention, but actually operationalize action. And it turns out that modern performance management is a way to operationalize action throughout the organization. But there's a whole lot of rich intervention that can happen after a survey as well. And so for a long time, we were very early in the industry to help organizations roll out the results of a survey to their managers and teams, and sort of enlist the help of, share the responsibility of employee engagement with their teams. And ever since we've done that, it's been 15 years really since we first rolled out our first action planning approach. We have seen that the blank page problem is real, and managers on the front lines are not engagement experts. And so we have been iterating and iterating and iterating for over a decade now on how to position managers and their teams to take great action based on their own results. And we see AI as just simply a new tool in that fight to equip managers and teams to have better discussions, and then use those discussions to generate ideas for action. So the way that this works is we have long had discussion starters within our tool, and these are basically focus group questions that a manager can use in a follow-up conversation with their team to help contextualize the results of their survey, right? And there have often been gaps in the discussion starters, right? As you add your own custom content, you either have to write your own discussion starters, or pay a vendor to do so. And generative AI allows us to fill in all those gaps. And so that's one example of sort of one of those small, sort of almost invisible applications of AI. You probably wouldn't even notice it. But we're using AI to help us fill in those blank spots in our discussion starters, help teams have better conversations. Then within action planning, the tools that help teams collaborate on what are we going to do about these results. We said this problem, I know what success looks like for me. I know how my performance is evaluated, was a problem for us. How are we going to act on that? And by the way, here's all our notes from the discussion we just had. Generative AI can take all that rich context that is unique to a team. So we call this expert informed AI. So we continue to have expert analysis and expert ideas around action informed by our awesome IO psychologists on our insights team. Those still exist in our tool, and are still really a rich source of inspiration for our users. But generative AI can then come along and take the context from the team itself. So you work in product design and in this corner of the organization, and this was your problem, and this was what you said in the contextualizing discussion starter conversation. Here's a few ideas. We still have humans in the loop to take that inspiration and make it their own, and make it context sensitive, and decide what to do with it. But that is how AI assisted action planning sort of overlays an existing solution, and sort of puts it on steroids and makes it so much better and really feel pretty magical when you're doing it.
That's the piece. Again, we've said it a couple of times, but that picture in my head of if you had someone who knew the nuances of each department or each team, and that person could tailor some of these things, that'd be great, but we don't have those people.
Yep.
This lets us do that contextualization to, we're in product management, we're in marketing, we're in whatever area of the business, customer
Yep.
success. It can tailor some of those things to that area they're in and
Yep.
help to make that a little bit more relevant to them. And it's not just a generic thing, it's a little more tailored to them. So it's as you said, an idea starter. I love those examples. One of the things I want to call out is these examples you're sharing here. There are lots of ways that AI is being used across the entire employment lifecycle.
Yeah,
the ways we're talking about here are low risk. We're not picking employees to hire. We're not deciding who to terminate. We're not using it for those sorts of purposes. We're using it to elevate the performance of all of our people, to help our managers be more effective, to help make sure that people are engaged and connected at work. Those things are, again, low risk on the spectrum of things, decisions we can be making as HR professionals and practitioners and business leaders overall. I wanted to call that one out because, again, the first thing people imagine is, so I saw that headline, AI went off the rails. Like, yeah, but in this sort of context, it's pretty safe. As you said, human in the loop. We have a person right beside it. We have expert informed. Like, we're not just grabbing something off the internet and posting it out there for people to use as a template tool.
Yeah.
And again, some of us in HR probably will have to admit we've been guilty of just grabbing some document off the internet. Like, okay, that's a performance management template. Great. I'll change our logo out and we're good to go. Like, we use those things. It's just, again, by nature of being busy and trying to find a way to get it done. But this is a low risk. It's an idea starter. No more start from a blank page. I love that sort of vision there. One of the things I want to ask you about is we've heard about some of these really interesting and amazing things that the tools can do, supporting managers, guiding them. I want to play devil's advocate for a second and say, what about the people out there that hear this and think, okay, well, our managers are going to be like hands off after this. They're just going to let the tools do all the work and they're just going to give that up. They're not doing a very good job now anyway. Is this going to help them or actually just reinforce that behavior of being disengaged as a manager? What are your thoughts on that and how would you address that?
Yeah, I think that, listen, I've been doing this for a long time, so I think there's a real temptation sometimes, both as product developers and as, HR, to let some bad experiences sort of cloud, the way that we think about our people. And generally, we try to really fight against that. And so I think that almost, we take there's almost always positive intent. There are bad managers in the world, but more often than not, the bad managers, it's not an intent thing.
Yes.
It's not a will thing. It's a skill thing. And so we think, and our mission for a long time has been trying to take a manager from where they are and level them up. And so you might have a poor manager, again, because of skill, not will, that you can take from being a poor manager to a mediocre manager. And you might change their life and their team's life by taking them from where they are to where they, to one level up from that. And you might take a mediocre manager and turn them into a great manager. And that's ultimately what we've been trying to do in HR for decades anyway. This is just a new tool in that fight. And I think embedded in the systems that you're using, at the right moment, at the right time. I think that AI can really help you solve some of those skill problems. Again, I don't think any tool anywhere is going to figure out the will problem, and that becomes kind of a coaching out problem opportunity more than
Let's help them find a job
coaching out.
competition across the street.
So that's how I think about it. This is a tool. It's going to help people level up from where they're at. And it might do so in a really, really meaningful way.
That was a great answer. I thought I had you stop there for a second. That was a tremendous answer. And I agree with you. I say it all the time. Like managers, I don't know any managers in my entire working lifetime that have ever woke up in the morning and said, how can I make Phil's life miserable today? Yeah. Like they don't do that on purpose, but they have some gap. They haven't seen it modeled properly. They don't have they are too busy and can't pay attention. Like whatever those things happen to be, you can call them excuses, you can call them reasons, but they've got something that's holding them back from that. Yep. But if you unlock that for them and for the people that work with them, that creates a very different and very positive sort of outcome. I tell everybody to think about it this way. What if, picture right now, for all of you listening in, close your eyes for a second, picture that manager in your organization who is amazing at giving feedback, recognizing their people, elevating their stories. When someone does something, they are celebrating it from the rooftops. What if every one of your managers could be like that manager? How dramatically would that change your organization? And that's the sort of vision that I'm getting as I'm hearing you talk to these things, Phil, about the ways the tools can make managers more informed, more aware, more action-oriented, more focused on their people. Like all of these things are the big takeaway for me in this. So I'm enjoying this so much.
Yep, that's so.
Let's see. I was going to ask you one more question. So just broadly, we've talked about a couple of different things in this conversation. What do you think this makes possible for the HR leaders out there? We talked about the managers a little bit. We talked about sort of being on the employee side of this, receiving this value. What does this make possible for the HR leaders who are listening in here and who are hopefully going to be benefiting from this somehow?
Yeah. So I think we've been kind of digging around the edges at some of the major problems, I think, that HR and HR pros run into. And we think time is maybe the biggest universal constraint. Even back to that last metaphor we were talking about, the skill versus will equation. You can take an excellent manager who's awesome at giving feedback and give them a time crunch, give them a lot of competing pressures. And, on any given day, they might be a real poor manager, but just because they got a lot of competing tension coming at them. And so what this enables, I think, HR to do is that we think it is a lever. It allows HR to scale up their impact. We know that as HR pros, one of the most important things that our customers care about is making our tools as easy to use as possible. That's partly altruistic because they want the tools that they're asking their employees to use to be adopted, to be good experiences, to do what they set out to do and achieve the goals that they set out to achieve. But it's partly selfish too, right? Because I'm a small team, I've got a lot of pressures. I can't have a tool that's driving lots of calls to my inbox and to my phone, helping users deal with, whether it's action planning or goal setting or whatever. So on the ease of use side, we see AI as a real lever to make a lot of impact in terms of making tools easier to adopt and easier to use over time. On the HR side, we also see it as a huge lever to ease administrative burden. And so I talked about a couple of use cases that we're already doing inside of our tool. Smart Summary is an example of that, but that also benefits end users, managers, and employees. I talked about the question mapping that's happening magically behind the scenes without you ever knowing it's happening. These are just ways I think that HR pros who are just as time strapped as the other employees and managers across the organization, maybe even more so. AI is simply a lever in your toolkit to help lever up your impact. So I think for me, that's the great promise of AI, that it can help HR and HR pros give away the crummy, mind-numbing, horrible parts of the job and really focus in on the strategic, the impactful work, which is ultimately probably what drew you to the role in the first place.
That's it, Phil. I'm taking your honorary badge back. Don't you know that everyone got into HR because they wanted to look at survey comments? And that's the whole reason for completing,
Absolutely.
oh gosh, yes, I'm with you. I'm with you. That's the way I usually talk about this, is like this. Most of us have a vision as HR leaders of what good looks like, what our team performance looks like, what the organization performance looks like, what engagement looks like. We have a picture in our head what that is. Yep. And we're always striving for that. And many times we're too busy doing some of these other things to actually get to that. And so if it unlocks that, it makes that possible, that creates a very different and positive outcome on every single person in the organization, and us as a profession of HR leaders. We get to reclaim a little of our time, a little bit of our sanity, so we can put that back into, reinvest that back into those dividends of our people into the company. So I love that. Is there anything we have not run across in the conversation so far today that you're like, oh, I've got one other thing I wanted to throw in there, or anything you want to double down on as like a big takeaway for the audience before we start to wrap up?
We've been thinking and talking a lot about applications of AI. Maybe I'll just throw out some of the principles we're using as we think about how to press forward. We've got dozens of applications AI currently in research and development, hundreds kind of on the list of things that we're not yet ready or able to do. And so I'll quickly kind of just throw out some of the principles we're using, because these might spark thoughts as you go to look at how your current set of vendors is applying AI, or the problems you're trying to solve with technology. What questions you might ask a vendor. We've got 4 Ps that kind of form our principles. So we've got people is first. So we think AI can augment humans. We see AI as a great lever that can equip and extend the power of humans. And we're really trying to take a people first approach to the application of AI. Privacy is the second P. So all of our applied AI is happening within our own cloud hosted environment, which allows us to, harness the power of these large language models without sharing our customers' data with third parties. And so it's all safe, secure, protected. It's not being used as training data. And I think that's really important. Beyond just the usage and governance around the data, we're still super committed to the confidentiality promises we make to our customers and end users, and really focused on making sure that as we roll out AI, that we're living up to the privacy and confidentiality promises we make. Problems is our third P. So we're problem focused, right? This isn't just a tool, and it's a really powerful new tool, but we're in love with the problem space, and AI is just the most recent kind of power tool that we're using to solve problems in this space. Fourth P is priorities. So we know there's going to be tension with some of those things sometimes. Sometimes you might find a really interesting problem you can solve with AI, but it might undermine some of your human first, that people first mentality. And so our priorities are people, privacy, and then problems. So I throw that out there as sort of our guiding principles that we're using as we develop AI. They might spark some thoughts for our listeners in terms of what questions to ask vendors as they go think about applied AI in their own workflows.
Excellent. And Quantum's got one extra P, and that's Phil. So that's their bonus on that side.
P, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Okay. So I know that you are actually going to be going deeper on this topic in a few weeks, I believe it is. There's a session coming up. Tell us more about that in case someone listening in wants to go and check that out.
Yeah, so we've got a webinar coming up. It's going to be me and a few of our product people, as well as our head of employee success. here at Quantum Workplace, which is what we call our own HR department. We're moderating a panel, clicking a little bit deeper into what Ben and I have been talking about today, and talking about what's guiding our work with applying AI to HR and helping HR teams lever their impact. If you can't wait until middle of April for that, you can always go to Quantum Workplace and sign up for our newsletter and stay tuned. Again, we've got dozens of new applications of AI in the works now. So.
Yes. I saw the team actually post in the chat a few minutes ago or earlier at some point in the conversation, they posted in the chat a link to some of the announcements about some of these things you're talking about here. If someone wants to read a little deeper and understand more about that, they can check that out in the chat in the comment section over on LinkedIn. One of the things you mentioned there towards the end, as you were talking there, it kind of came back to me really quickly. You talked about the importance of really having a vision for what AI looks like, not just, oh, ChatGPT is a thing, let's throw that in the product and go. Right. But we need a guiding set of principles that allow us to make decisions day to day, a framework where, well, this doesn't align with these, so we're not going to do that. It's possible AI can do that, but we're not going to do that. We've made a choice not to because it doesn't align with this framework. Right. And I think that's really important for anyone listening out there to hear, because you don't get that from every HR technology company that exists. Some of them are like wowed by the cool shiny stuff, and they jump in feet first, and you'll find out sometimes it doesn't always work the way they hoped it would. But having the set of principles that backs that up, that gives you a foundation to start from, makes me comfortable as an analyst that covers the space, makes a customer comfortable as they're listening to that, and makes a prospect comfortable as they're trying to figure out who can help them do that. You want someone that's got those kind of principles in place. So appreciate that about you and the team, Phil. I really enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you being willing to share. I'll give you your honorary badge back. You did a great job, and you can keep that for as long as you need it. You flash it, you're in the secret club. We'll all let you into the meetings and all the good stuff. So awesome. All kidding aside, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for hanging out and for sharing your insights.
Likewise, Ben. Thanks for having me. Really appreciated it and enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. All right. To everybody else out there, I hope you got some good ideas, some good comments, some good thoughts on this. Don't let the conversation die. You can come back and chat into the comments here on this session at any time. It will let the team know. They can come back, circle back, answer questions if you're curious, or you're like, I want to know more about what Phil said. You can go ahead and do it at any time. We appreciate all of you out there for doing the hard work of HR every single day, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.